Our organization is the Academic Distinction Fund, and we collaborate and partner and work with the East Baton Rouge Parish School System in order to help close the achievement gap between the children at risk and children from low-income families and those who are much more privileged in our community.
The Distinguished Speaker Series is a project of the Academic Distinction Fund that we've been doing for several years, but we bring in national experts to come in and just sit down and talk to community leaders, policymakers, teachers, etc., about best practices in certain areas. We've done this year how important it is in terms of the investment in pre-K. We had a gentleman from the Federal Reserve. We had Melinda Southern here, who is an expert in childhood nutrition and obesity. And now we have Dr. Mapp here, who is an expert in getting parental engagement. So it's been an excellent series this year, and we will continue it.
Today I'm going to be talking about the importance of family and community engagement, and what we now know from the research is that it's an essential ingredient to whole school reform. I think many times people think that this engagement is an add-on or something we do when we have time, but we're now learning that is absolutely essential to closing the achievement gap and school improvement.
People mobilize around transactions. We're talking about organizing people to be these transformative agents of change. And that's what we found in our research, that a lot of the work by these groups is transformational, not just transactional, okay? Don't despair if you can't get everybody on board right off the bat. Don't despair, okay? This is the 20-60-20 rule of change. Start with the willing, ladies and gentlemen. Okay? Don't try to force people, because when you try to force people, they're not going to want to do it. What happens is that when the 20% starts to get rolling, make sure there's venues for them to be able to present their findings and their work. Have groups of teachers and parents come and talk to your schools about how great things are now that they're working as partners. Because see, that middle group, I call them the group from Missouri, right? Show me. Once they see that this is working, they're going to say, I want to sign up next. Then you've got this last group. Now, when you've got 60% of the crowd ganging up on them, what my students tell me, they either have to step off or step in, right? Okay? So don't despair. Start slow. This is not going to happen overnight. So I told you about my cake analogy. I'll end with this. We talked about those essential ingredients. So let's really focus in on the cake, okay? I often say that the flour of a cake is really reminds me of the teaching and learning that goes on in our school. It's the ingredient that has the most volume. And we all know that what goes on in that classroom is probably one of the most important ingredients. But in a cake, if you leave out the baking powder, what happens? It doesn't rise, it's gooey. It's not a cake, right? So I want to leave you with this thought. Your family engagement and your community engagement is really the baking powder of student achievement and improvement. Without your family and community engagement, just like without the baking powder, our students will never rise to the levels that we want them to, and neither will our schools. Okay?
How do you encourage more parental involvement in public schools?
Well, two things have to happen. First of all, we have to build the capacity of our school staff to engage in partnerships with our families. Many times we have not done a good job in the higher education world of equipping our teachers and our new school leaders on how to partner with families. So we need a capacity building initiative in that direction. And then also with families, many times they don't actually know the best way to be engaged in their children's education. A lot of times that's mistaken for not caring, but it's actually that many of our families just don't know how. So we also need a capacity building effort to raise the level of our parents' engagement in their children's education and in schools.
Parents are teachers first. We need our parents more actively engaged in our schools, whether it's part of the decision-making process, whether it's volunteering, or whether it's just modeling those appropriate behaviors at home.
These practical tools and tips and techniques that Dr. Karen Mapp is going to share with us today, because these are leaders in this audience today, and they can go back to the places where they work and where they impact and apply the information that will directly help our children be successful in their schools within East Baton Rouge Parish School System.